Warning. This program contains strong language, auditory violence, and mental nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Listener discretion advised.
Alright, welcome back, brothers and sisters, to Unshackled Fury, your uncensored home for all things Warcraft. I am your host, Berserker, and hey, how about that new intro tune, huh? Yeah, well, you know, there's a bit of heavy metal in my blood, and I figured that I needed to find something that was maybe a little more me. The old theme was pretty good, but I kind of like this one a little bit better. So we're going to try it out, see how it feels. So welcome back, all of you longtime listeners, and welcome to any new listeners who may have just found out about this show because of my interview on the Realm Maintenance podcast, and I'll get to that a little bit later. So welcome to the show. I'm your host, Berserker, and I don't know what you may have been told about me, but this is kind of a crazy off-the-cuff show. I say a lot of stupid, ridiculous shit. I'm kind of an idiot, so you get what you pay for. That's kind of where I'm going with that. On this week's episode, I'll be raging on professions, talking about the Legion Summit that came and went here a few weeks ago, talking about the pre-expansion patch being on the beta and what to expect in the weeks to come. Weekly developer Q&As are happening now. We're going to talk a little bit about those. Class trials. Ooh, try before you buy. Going to hit a little bit upon that. And we have some news about one of my favorite Warcraft items, the Brawlers Guild. And before I get into our rage portion of the show this week, I did want to send a special thanks out to longtime listener, friend of the show, Navox, who has been very helpful to this show in terms of technical side. And now there are some new graphics you might see on the SoundCloud page and on Twitter and hearing about. We'll figure out how to use all of his skills to their utmost. But thank you, Navox, for all of your help. You're a true warrior, a true brother, and your help is most appreciated. All right, let's get on to our first segment of the show I like to call Let's Rage. Let's Rage. So this past week, Blizzard had the second of their live Legion Q&As, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the news. But Blizzard has decided that for Legion, and at least the time leading up to Legion, they're going to be doing some live Q&As where we get a chance to ask some questions to the developers about specific things. This week it was professions, and there'll be more to come in the future. And while it was interesting to see their thoughts on professions going into Legion, the changes that they're going to be making, answering some of the feedback from members of the community, and the subsequent fallout of these Q&As is bound to happen. There will always be people that, I don't know, get bent out of shape, you could say, about the changes that are made. Some people don't really care that much. Some people get all crazy. Some people are happy and supportive of the changes. You know, it really runs the gamut. You see a wide range of reactions to these things. But the thing that I thought of the most as I was combing through, I wasn't able to watch it live, but I was able to sort of watch the live blogging, the tweeting, the twittering, the twattering that was going on. And really what came to mind is how much I hate professions. I've never liked them. I go to work all day. I go to work, and that's where I am, 40 plus hours a week. I don't need to come home and do more work on my game. I do gardening on the weekends. I pull weeds, and it's 110,000 fucking degrees where I live right now, and I spent all day today. My arms are burned. Like I look like, I don't know, some sort of roast right now. I don't want to have to go in a game and pick herbs and do weeding in a farm. The only reason I ever did that stupid farm thing was because I felt bad for the dog and I needed a home. Yeah, I'm a sucker. That's right. Like a robot, I will go in and I will do these things. But I was just reminded how much I don't enjoy professions. And my love affair, my love-hate, my hate affair, is that a thing? With professions really started way, way back. And I'll have to take you back to the hallowed days of the Burning Crusade expansion, when I used to run around with two other warriors, Malachi and Rommel. Rommel's still around. Malachi, we don't know what happened to him. He was sucked up in the void of marriage. While we were leveling, because we were brand new to the game at the time, while we were leveling, I was told by our dear friend Malachi that once I got to level 70, the thing that I would need to do is craft myself a Lionheart Executioner. Now, for those of you that have never seen one or don't have blacksmithing, there was a whole thing back then when you had to pick a specialization, whether it was, I think, axe or mace or sword or whatever the thing was, and I knew that I wanted to have this Lionheart Executioner. Like, this was the weapon that I was going to use in a raid, as I was convinced, due to my friend mostly, that being a 3130 arms warrior was going to be the preferable way to raid in Karazhan, which is total bullshit and not even close to the truth. And I soon found this out the hard way, that after months of scraping together all of the materials that I needed, and you had to upgrade this thing 3 separate times. After getting all this stuff together, I mean, not even like a week later, I was signed up with a raiding guild and was told, yeah, you need to go Fury and you need to craft a fist weapon. And then you need to go get the other one out of the Isle of Keldanos, or whatever it was back then. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. Fuck professions. I'm never doing this crap again. This is ridiculous. Now, I understand that there are those of you out there, you play the auction house. Good for you, Mr. Moneybags, Mrs. Moneybags. I'm happy for you. You found a way to make it work. You enjoy doing all this kind of stuff. Fan-fucking-tastic. I will never do this. I got suckered in thanks to the garrisons. I got a couple of alts. Yeah, I got 3 whole alts. And I got them in the garrison, and one's making potions, and one's doing fuck all, and my main is doing blacksmithing and jewel crafting, just as he pretty much always has. But no, never again will I get sucked into this. I understand, to be fair, coming out of this Legion Q&A about professions, they did discuss how there will be a little more going along with the class fantasy. Profession fantasy, I suppose. There's going to be some quests that'll send you out, do some fun things. That's great. Because even though it wasn't a blacksmithing quest, if you had more stuff like Shadowmourne, if you had more stuff like Valnir, whatever that healer mace was in Wrath of the Lich King, if you had more quests like that were designed to be profession quests, that could be fun. I actually do kind of like, God damn it, I'm going back on my own word already. That could be kind of fun, and I could see myself doing that. But professions as a whole, forget about it. Just forget about it. I never want to be a part of it. And if I never see another anvil as long as I live, that'll be fine, because I know I'm just going to get suckered into building something and then being told, well, if you want to keep it competitive, at least through the second tier of rating, you'll have to upgrade it 6 times, and you'll have to farm this stuff for a month, and you'll have to do all of this other stuff after hours, and blah, blah, blah. Oh, my God. It makes me suicidal just thinking about it. So, for all of you who enjoy professions, congratulations. I wish you the best of luck come Legion. But I am pulling the parachute. I am out of this one. Goodbye, professions. Goodbye forever. May you never be seen again.
And now it's time for News and the Blues.
So it's been a few weeks since we last got together, and in that time we've had quite a bit of news that has dropped in regards to Legion, how its development is going, and some things that I think might be fun to explore, things to talk about. But first, I wanted to talk about a little something that is going on that coincides with the release of this episode. I was interviewed recently by Ro over at the Realm Maintenance podcast. It was quite an interesting conversation that we had, and a lot of it focused on episode 10 of this show, where I had talked about, well, essentially my view on the state of podcasting as it exists right now in the Warcraft community, and where I feel that a lot of shows are coming up short when there is a lot of potential to be explored. And one of the things that I really appreciated about the interview was that we were able to have a fair and open and honest discussion about his ideas, about my ideas, talk about this show, what I view as my vision for what I wanted to accomplish here, and what I think the WoW podcast community in general can still achieve. And so if you have not checked that out, go ahead and hit it up. Episode 199 of Realm Maintenance should be up by the time you get to this show. And if you heard that first and you're here now, welcome. Thanks for checking it out, giving this one a chance. You never know. You might like what you find, or you might say, God, this is shit. This show is awful. No wonder I've never heard of it. In which case, hey, thanks anyway. And, Odin be with you. All right. So what has happened since we last got together? Well, there was something called the Legion Summit. Now, I don't remember there ever being any sort of summit type thing in the past. Maybe I just wasn't paying that much attention. But there was an event that Blizzard had. This was back a few weeks ago. This is about 3 weeks ago now, which tells you how long it's been since we were last here on this show. They invited several shows, several streamers, several podcasters, several websites. And among those, they had MMO Champion, Wowhead, Final Boss TV, personalities Towley, Slootbag. They also had Judge Hype, Vanyan, and WoW Chakra. Folks that they were allowed to interview, pretty much the big ones. Tom Chilton, Chris Robinson, John Haidt, James Waugh, Ian Hazacostas, and J. Allen Brack. And what did they talk about? Well, they talked about all kinds of stuff. Little nitty-gritty details, some bigger things. So I wanted to focus on some of the bigger ideas that I thought were of interest. One being that we are apparently going to get 3 raid tiers and 2 raids within the first release content. So it's going to mirror somewhat of what we had in Warlords. And they're looking at 3 content patches throughout the expansion with some room to grow. The overall feeling that came out of these interviews was that they are looking to have better pacing. Yes, I know. We've heard this every expansion. That they realized there was this drought of content that we went a year and a half. We just celebrated the year release of Hellfire Citadel, if that gives you some idea of how typical this has become. And once again, they are promising that they have recognized their failures, that they are going to set a good pace, and that they're going to, if anything, maybe take some advice from Lower Walker Cho and just slow down. They're going to slow down. They are looking to ensure that dungeons are going to play a better role now throughout the expansion, where they will be releasing new dungeons throughout. So it won't be just this front-loaded kind of thing, and then they'll be doing whatever the mythic, the increased difficulty, but it's essentially the same content. Quite honestly, I think that this is the sweet spot for expansions. When their release schedules have worked the best was when you had sort of the Wrath, particularly the ICC model. Now, I know that one dragged on a bit, but you had this idea where when a raid came out, you also had some corresponding dungeons. For me, I think it's great to have that story component where you're not just jumping from raid to raid, that you have these fill-in dungeons, if you want to call it that, where not only are you catching up on gear, but you are also having this sort of extension of the story. It keeps you hooked in, gives you something else to do, keeps you engaged and interested in the expansion. So it's great to hear that they are going to be going back maybe towards this model. This is something that they really haven't done in quite a while. In Mist of Pandaria, that was certainly a concern that a lot of people had, was that there weren't any dungeons really coming after the main group. Again, in Warlords, we really didn't have much of anything. And my hope is that this is one of the ways in which Legion will prove as a remedy to the issues that the last couple of expansions have had, and the sort of lethargic response that the community has had to this content drought, which, quite frankly, it's hard to blame anyone for. One of the other big things that came out of the Legion Summit that I was particularly excited to hear about was the announcement that there will be a new animated series called Harbingers, which will focus on Illidan and his Illidari. Now, for those of you that remember, prior to the release of Warlords, we had the Lords of War animated series, and that was just fucking phenomenal. And it really built up the Warlords in a way that you haven't quite seen done before with any one of the Warcraft expansions, and it was a beautiful telling of the story. They blended sort of machinima and the cinematic aspect, the way that it was done. Beautifully done, beautifully written. I am very excited, as I think most people should be, about seeing Illidan and the story of his Illidari. If you read the Illidan book, which I did review a few months ago, you realize that there is quite a bit of complexity to these characters, and the way in which they're fleshing them out this time around, they're really getting their due. And where Illidan has been around for quite some time in the Warcraft lore, you haven't really seen him in Warcraft, I think, to his full potential. And so to dig in deeper to that and to give these characters the treatment and the respect that they deserve, the way that the warlords were, hopefully that will also translate to what happens in games, so you don't have, Kargath, the first boss in the first raid, getting killed off when he had one of arguably the best animated series entries in the Lords of War series. I mean, it was one of the most badass things I've seen, and then he willingly pretty much sacrifices himself in the first raid. That was kind of a bummer. So, yeah, hopefully they won't be doing that. A couple of other things coming out of the summit that I thought were worth noting. The developers are continuing to tease that there is something out there that is bigger than the old gods, nastier than the old gods, and in control of the Legion's actions. Now, if you read the Chronicle, the Warcraft Chronicle, Volume 1, you know what this is. If you're curious at all, again, I highly recommend you pick up that book. It's an amazing piece of Warcraft history, if you want to look at it that way, the way that it ties lore together, the way that it fills in some of the backstory even further. This is going to become very central to the fights that are coming later on. So if you haven't gotten a hold of the Chronicle, get a hold of it, because it really looks like they're going to start tying in that content pretty soon. The other two things, we are looking at, unfortunately, a lot of major changes with respect to major characters dying. I avoid spoilers at all costs. There are some that are just completely unavoidable. And the static leadership that we have seen somewhat within both the Horde and Alliance, that is definitely changing. And so hold on to your butts. It's going to get wild out there. So those are the kind of things from the Legion Summit that I thought were of interest. If you didn't get a chance to see a lot of the articles and videos that came out of it, go back and take a look. A lot of detail to come out of that. Like I said, some of the more nitty-gritty kind of details. They talk about artifacts, they talk about professions, they talk about PvP. They really do go into a lot more detail than I'm going into here. But these are some of the bigger ideas that I thought were worth talking about and of interest to all of us. Following up on that, on the 14th of June, the pre-expansion patch finally hit the beta. So at this point, it is only a matter of time until we're going live, folks. We're looking at 9 weeks until launch, 9 weeks until Legion actually hits. So I didn't see a date. Given the timetables we're kind of used to at this point, I'd say we're looking at late July, perhaps, maybe the 26th for go live. So that doesn't really give us a lot of time. And what will be included in this pre-patch? Now, that's the important thing. So what are all the things that are changing? Well, there's a ton. And here are some of the major things that we will see. The pre-patch event will come. We typically see these with every expansion. This one is going to be a demon invasion. There will be certain zones that are going to see a demon invasion, and there's some activities tied to that. If you've been on the beta, you've been able to test it at certain times, so that is definitely on its way. And it looks to be, I don't know, I hope it's like the Wrath one. I know people didn't like the zombie thing, but I thought it was fucking cool. Yeah, it was a little bit annoying, but just watching this plague is taking over and people are going nuts, and I don't know. I liked it. I like seeing a little bit of mayhem out there, so we'll see what this looks like. The pre-patch will also bring the new wardrobe, the new transmog system, where finally we can free up all that bag space. Hooray! Void storage is being free, and I don't even know what I'm going to put in it now. I have all these bags and storage and shit now. I don't know even what I'm going to put in them. But now we will have the ability to store everything that we have, whatever your armor type is, weapon types, all of those things are now going to be, I believe, account-wide. So if you have something on a Death Knight, something on a Warrior, you both play plate, they'll be able to interchange. I guess class restrictions do apply. But that is going live, and I know for a lot of us that is a very big deal, and that'll be a welcome change. There will also be the new talents and glyph systems being put into place. These are the major changes that are happening to each class, and this gives us all time to really get used to what's going to be coming in Legion and the rotations, at least as far as the early going is. That will all be in place come the pre-patch. There are simply just a shit ton of class changes, and I can't possibly name them all here. So I highly encourage, go out, check your forums, see some videos, do whatever you got to do to prepare, because I guarantee if you have not looked at anything, you will be at least a little bit lost unless you're one of these amazing theory crafters and you'll, boom, just jump right into it. Otherwise, good luck. Along with that, you will also see the updated animations and sound effects that Blizzard has put in place for Legion. So far, what I have seen, they are glorious and just amazing to see. Very satisfying. When you hit something, you can feel that crunch. You really feel whatever that aesthetic is that you're making an impact. And it's I don't know, there's just something very primal. It hits you deep in the brain somewhere, and you feel like, yes, this feels right. So there's a lot of that coming, and I can't wait to see a lot of that. Secondary stats, some of the minor stuff will be changing. Bye-bye, multi-strike. Yeah, goodbye. Nobody ever liked you anyway. There will be minor updates to the toy box, the UI. There'll be some graphics engine updates. Ooh, pretty. Everything will look pretty. There'll be a revamped PvP system. So for those of you that PvP, again, I say good luck, because that is, good Lord, that has been a long and winding road. I wish you all the best of luck. And perhaps most notably, for the late to the gamers and the alt lovers out there, you will no longer be able to start the legendary ring quest once this patch goes live. You will still be able to complete it if you have already started it, but you will not be able to start it fresh once that patch goes live. Once Legion goes live, then the quest line will be removed entirely. So if you're interested in getting that done, you want the achievement, or you want to have that ring while you're leveling, go ahead and get it done now. So that was on the 14th of June. Then on the 15th of June, Blizzard had what was the first of what they're calling their weekly developer Q&As. For me, the biggest thing that came out of this one, and this was held with Josh Allen and Ian Hazzikostas, the biggest change that, or the biggest, semi-announcement that came out of this was the confirmation that Blizzard is going to be switching gears back to what they typically have always done, which is have longer expansions. And I say praise Odin, because trying to do anything else was foolish to begin with. Now, going forward, I hope that this is what it's going to look like, but what they're essentially saying is that they are going to be embracing this idea that there will be more content patches and longer expansions. So again, going back to what they had said earlier at the summit, they are looking to regulate the rollout of this patch content and really embrace the story that they have encapsulated within each expansion. One of the laments of Warlords was that there were other storylines that even Blizzard has admitted they were unable to explore further because of the time crunch that really they put themselves under. So this now will allow Legion and subsequent expansions to really breathe, to allow us the time to go out, to explore these stories, time for Blizzard to go out and give us these things in the first place. This goes hand in hand with having more raid tiers, having more dungeons as the stories progress. They're talking about more world quests as time goes on. Of course, now we have the class order halls, or whatever we're calling them, and that is certainly a hub for activity there. They can continue to add content as the expansion rolls on. Quite frankly, I couldn't be happier to hear that. This idea that they were going to be doing yearly expansions or whatever that nonsense was, I love you, Blizzard, but that was bullshit from the start. Nobody believes that you're going to be rushing through expansions and have them be successful. Warlords was, in many ways, in my mind, a success in terms of the aesthetic. I thought it looked beautiful. I enjoyed the garrisons at the beginning. I thought the story was engaging, but it did fall flat. It did fall short. It cut itself off. It's good to see that they recognize that this was a problem, and going forward, they're not going to leash themselves in the same way, and they're going to allow that room that they need to keep us engaged, to tell the story that they want to tell and that we want to hear and play through. So I was very happy to hear that, and good on you, Blizzard. That's great to hear. One of the things that they did talk about, though, that isn't going to make it is Thaldranath, which is one of the islands of the Broken Isles. At one point, it was included in earlier maps that we had seen, like around the alpha time, at the launch or the announcement of Legion. We had seen that was an island out there. But this is something that they said is not going to make it. Now, they claim, and I have no reason to doubt them, I suppose, but they claim that this was cut because they found something cooler that they wanted to do. All right, hey, listen, I'm not going to complain about them wanting to bring us cooler content. Thank you. That's great. When I was researching this, I actually found this great video by Haven Games. If you look on YouTube for this, the video is called "And the Dangers of Being a WoW Island." This video goes through and explores the survival rate of potential WoW islands, and it's actually kind of funny because this guy correctly guessed, and this was some time ago, that Thaldranoth would not survive the early iteration process, and he goes through a litany of islands that either survived or didn't survive. Ones that didn't survive, I think we remember Farallon and Ogre Island for Warlords. He also talks about the Dragon Isles near Tirisfal very early on, Gilligam's Isle and the island of Dr. Lepidus near Stranglethorn. And he talks about some of the others, how they did survive, but they weren't what we were told they would be, Ashran being one. So it's really funny stuff. So if you, I recommend you go check it out. And it's something to keep in mind as expansions roll out, that if you see an island, you may not ever see on live servers whatever that was intended to be. So don't get married to it. But a very funny video and something that I found coming out of that. So I recommend you check it out. One other thing to keep in mind from this first developer Q&A is that they did decide this time around, early on, that in order for us to unlock flying, we will have to accomplish a Pathfinder achievement. So keep in mind, while you are leveling in Legion, if there are achievements or portions of this achievement that you need to check off, make sure you got them loaded. Keep them on your screen. If you got to go out of the way to do something, go ahead and do that, because trust me, you are going to kick yourself in the ass later when all your buddies are flying around and you're like, God damn it, I can't fly around on my time-lost proto-drake because I just wanted to get through it and I'm being lazy. Trust me, you'll be glad that you spent some time getting this on early. But that was the first weekly developer Q&A. The second developer Q&A, which they just had this last week, was about professions, and I think you all know how I feel about that. So if you want to check out more about what they talked about there, please feel free to go to all of your usual Warcraft news outlets and check those out. One of the other cool features of Legion that I really appreciate as somebody who does not play a lot of alts is they will be introducing, along with the character boosts, class trials. Now, what this will allow is that in Legion, once you have used a level 100 character boost, if you have one available, you will be allowed to try out a specific class of your choice in a starting experience, just to kind of get the hang of the core abilities, and then you'll actually be able to join in on a Broken Shore scenario to use those abilities in combat and see how you feel about it. So it's like, going to any car lot and taking it out for a test drive. This is something that, people have talked about switching classes for years and whether or not Blizzard will ever allow any sort of paid transfer. This is probably the closest that we'll ever get to that, and I think that's pretty cool. For somebody like myself, where I've only played a couple of classes all of these years, it might be nice to say, you know what, we're going to check out this Warlock, see what that looks like. Or let's check out this mage. Well, no, I'll never check out a fucking mage. Let's say I want to check out a monk or, a shaman. You'll have the ability to do it. You'll get through a good chunk of content to give you the flavor for it. And then if you decide you want to do something else, you'll have the freedom to do that. Now, one thing they did make sure to point out is that demon hunters will not be included. So if you decide to pick up a demon hunter, well, you're stuck with it. So make sure that you are fully aware before you click on that demon hunter. But otherwise, class trials, sounds good. Ready to hit that up. And one final item to close out the news this episode. One of my all-time favorite features in Warcraft, the Brawlers Guild, will soon be closing its doors until sometime in Legion. Now, if you have never been down in the Deep Run Tram in Stormwind or the Valley of Honor in Orgrimmar, you will find, if you get down there, some fighting areas, some fighting pits, some arenas, places to test your mettle, so to speak. What this is, it's kind of like a little side event, a little mini game that they have within the game. It's one of those ones that allows you to really test your own ability without having to worry about what anybody else is doing. It's kind of like the Proving Grounds, but fighting against essentially these specialized fights that have odd, funny, maddening, little quirky things about each particular fight in order to defeat that boss. There are 8 ranks to get through, and as you get through those ranks, you're granted certain rewards and other little perks. Some of the things that you can get, they have these vanity shirts where you get some sort of corresponding buff that people can see, so you can show off. There's a teleporting ring. There's a huge Mushan beast mount. Looks freaking crazy. There's a clockwork gnome companion, some other odds and ends. So if you've never been down there, if you've never checked it out, now's a pretty good time because you're all geared up, you're max level, and it's a fun way to challenge yourself on some solo content. So get down there before the cage doors close at the end of this expansion. Test your mettle. Show the people what you got. And with that, we'll move on to our third and final segment of this episode. Mike Morhaime tries to pick up a chick at a bar after a South Korean StarCraft tournament.
Hello? So, this has never happened before. This is I wanted to start off, I think that sums most of it up.
You can't be serious. GG.
And that concludes this installment of Mike Morhaime tries to pick up a chick at a bar after a South Korean StarCraft tournament. And that concludes episode 13 of Unshackled Fury. To all my longtime listeners and to all you new listeners out there, thank you very much for joining me on this little experiment of mine. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Berserker Rage. You can find this show, Unshackled Fury, on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. If you haven't heard my interview on Realm Maintenance, I recommend you go over there, check it out, episode 199, and see what you think. So once again, thank you for joining me on this show, and until next time, strength and honor to you all.